Hey there, and welcome to another edition of Low Content Publishing for Beginners. My name is Rachel Harrison Sund. So today we're going to be talking about coloring books. Coloring books have been a hugely popular style of low content book on KDP for the last couple of years. Really started to explode a couple of years ago, especially in the adult coloring book niche. And, this is something that a lot of low content publishers have really wanted to get into. And the thought of actually having to outsource it can feel like it might actually be really expensive and, just cost prohibitive to do so. But today I'm going to show you a little tutorial and teach you how to create your own coloring books in a really short amount of time. And you can even do this at zero cost just by using free imagery that's already out there and a free vector editing software like the one I'm going to show you in this tutorial. So let's just dive right into the tutorial. Okay, so you're going to need three things to make your own coloring book. The first thing is you're going to need a vector graphic. That's what you're going to be editing. You're going to need a vector editing program, and I'm going to show you a free one here. And of course, you're going to need a program to put it all together. And for a free version, I'm going to recommend Canva. So Vecteezy is a pretty good free site to get free vector images from. They've got a really wide selection, and they've got some free and paid options available. And their free options are pretty decent. So once you're here at Vecteezy, you can just type in whatever you're looking for, and I do recommend choosing some sort of a theme at first. You don't want to create a really generic coloring book. You want to have some sort of a theme, whether it's animals or dinosaurs or, whatever it is. I'm just going to use animals as an example. So whatever you're looking for, you can just type it right into the search bar. And then what you're going to want to do if you're looking for free imagery, then just go over to the left menu here and just click on free license, and that's going to filter out anything that's paid. Now you do want to keep a few things in mind when searching for images to choose for your coloring book. You want to choose images that are simple and preferably already have an outline around them and just have a solid color on the inside. Anything that's more complex than that, even though it may actually be workable, it's probably just going to be a little bit more hassle than it's worth. So you want to find something that's already simple at the outset so that you don't have to put a ton of work into it. So just as an example here, I'm just going to click on this guy. This is a pretty complex set of illustrations. There's a lot of shading in there, a lot of gradients and things like that. That's just going to be too tricky to deal with. So we want to steer clear of anything like that. Things that'll work well are things like this. This one's just got outlines and solid fill colors, so that would be workable. Something like this would probably be pretty easy. If you wanted to go a bit more complex, you could even do something like this. This obviously looks like a far more complex illustration than the last couple I showed you, but this one still has solid fill colors and outlines, so this would still be workable. Now, I've already gone through and I have selected this illustration for myself. Now, there are two ways you can go about this. One is you can select files that only have one illustration per file. You can decide how many pages you want your coloring book to be, and then you can just round up that many images. If you want to make this even easier, then you can look for files like this, where there are multiple illustrations in one file. Then you can just download the one file, and the great thing about something like this is that all the illustrations in the file are going to be a similar style. So that's something to kind of think about if you are just downloading files with a single illustration on each file. You're really going to want to pay attention to if the styles all look cohesive between them. One way you can do that is you can just look for images that have been created by the same artist. And then oftentimes, even though they may have multiple files with a separate illustration on each file, because they've been done by the same artist, they will actually have a similar style to them, because you do want this to look cohesive at the end of it. Oftentimes, though, you can find a file that has 5, 10, or even 20 or more smaller illustrations within the file, And those are great. If you can just download one of those and have enough images in there to create half or even a full coloring book, that's fantastic. Okay, so once you've chosen your image, we're going to download the image. Now you are able to edit images directly in Vecteezy. They've got the Vecteezy editor. And if you wanted to do that, you could just click on this button right here, and that would take you to an in-browser vector graphics editor. But I'm not going to recommend it for this because there are a couple of key features that the Vecteezy editor is missing, and that's going to just make things a little bit more difficult for us. So we're going to ignore that for now. It does have some good features though, so if you wanted to play around with it, be my guest. But for now, I'm just going to download this vector. Okay, so the next step here is we need to have a vector graphic editing software. Now, if you've got Illustrator at home, that's great. That is definitely the industry standard when it comes to vector editing software. But if you're looking for a free alternative, there are a few different options out there, some definitely better than others. Now, for this tutorial, I tried out probably about 5 or 6 different ones, and each one seemed to have a different failure at some step of the process. The one I did find that's probably going to be the most useful, that does everything that we want it to do, is Gravit. This is a pretty powerful vector editing suite, and it's got everything that we are going to need. There is a free version and a paid version, but the free version does offer everything that we need, so that's great. Now, if you're looking for something that is a true replacement for Illustrator, that is free, you can check out Inkscape. I did not do that because Inkscape is a bit of a pain to use with a Mac. So if you are using a Mac, it's going to be a little bit of a pain. You have to download additional software to allow Inkscape to work on your Mac. So I just didn't even want to go there. This I thought was kind of a nice compromise. It's got everything we need, and we're totally going to be able to get by on the free version. So once you're here, you can just click try it now, and then you can just go straight to get started. Now, first thing we're going to do is we're going to set the size of our document. So it's a good idea to just keep in mind what size you want your final coloring book to be. For me, when I think about kids' coloring books anyways, they're usually about an 8 by 10 or an 8.5 by 11 or something like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to choose 8 by 10. And then I'm going to hit create. Now, just a quick side note here. You're going to see at the bottom this trial 15 days left. Don't worry about that. As soon as you sign up for this Gravit Designer, it's going to just kick you directly into the Pro version. And then when the 15-day trial is over, you're just going to have some of the features removed. You don't have to enter any information on this. You're not entering a credit card or anything like that. So you're just being given the full suite of features for those first 15 days. And then at the end of it, you'll be asked if you want to sign up for Pro. And off the top of my head, I can't remember. I think it's a monthly subscription. And if you don't want that, fine. You can just stick with the pared down version, and you should still have all the options that we are going to be using for this tutorial. So now what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to import that file that you just downloaded. So I'm going to go to File, Open Local File. I'm going to click the folder that I downloaded, and you're going to see a .ai, a .svg, and a .jpeg. You're going to want to use the .svg. And we're going to click Open, and now our file is ready to be edited. Now, one thing you'll notice is even though we set our initial page size as 8 by 10, once you upload an image, it's going to just take on the size of that image. So unfortunately, we are going to have to set that size again. Not a deal breaker, just a little bit of a pain. So we're just going to go over to the right here to page size, and first make sure the unit is in inches. And we're going to go over to here and we're going to have 8 by 10 again. Now we're just going to select that and resize it to fit. Next thing we're going to do is just get rid of this cream colored rectangle. We don't need that. And because I'm not super keen on working on a transparent background all the time, I like to have a solid color. I'm going to go back over here and I'm just going to click on the white background color. And now we've just got a solid background to work against. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to create the amount of pages that we're going to need here. So in my file, I've got 6 separate illustrations. I'm going to want one of these on each page. So I'm going to create 6 separate pages. That's going to be really handy when it comes time to export all of these illustrations. It's going to export them all individually, and then we can place them all individually into our actual coloring book file. So I'm going to go over to the Pages palette here, and I'm going to hit the Create New Page button 5 times. So I've got 6 pages. Then I'm going to toggle this switch, which puts us into multi-page mode. And I'm going to go up to this button, Fit All, and now I can see all the different pages all at once. And then I'm just going to put each illustration on its own page. Now we can toggle in and out of multi-page mode whenever we want. So I'm going to be working on this page now, so I'm going to toggle out of multi-page, and now I'm just on single page. Next thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to scale this up. Now this is where I'm just going to mention another little bit of a quirk here. Because we're using a bunch of free softwares, it's not going to be as seamless of a process as if we were just using Illustrator straight into InDesign. So just a couple of things to be aware of. Because we're going to be using Canva to create our actual coloring book file, Canva does accept SVG files, but they're pretty finicky with them. So what I recommend when it comes time to export this, we're going to export it as a JPEG. So that is why we need to scale this up to the size that we want at the end of it now. So I'm going to scale that right up. If our coloring book is about 8 by 10, then I'm going to want it probably at about that size. Once I'm happy that the final size is about what I'd like it to be, now I can go about actually turning this into something that we can use for a coloring book. So first, I'm going to select the illustration, then I'm going to go up here to the Ungroup button. I'm going to click that, and now all of its separate components are going to be available for me to edit individually. So I'll just select the first shape that we're going to work with here. Okay, so we're going to just go over to the Fills button here. Don't click on that eyedropper. We don't need to worry about that right now. You're just going to click on the actual colored circle. And we're just going to go down to white. Then we are going to go to borders. Same thing, but we want that to be black. Color fill is the default option, so we're going to hit that. And we are just going to choose black. Now, that black line is pretty weak, so we're going to want to beef that up a little bit, probably to about 3. We'll see how that looks. You may even want to try 4. And you can just play around with that depending on your illustration. So this is essentially what we're going to do to each one of these components. And that is how we're going to get the nice black outlines for our illustration. Now, if you want to speed up the process, what you can do is just select all of the objects at once and do what I just did with that first object. Now, chances are some of these objects are going to be treated slightly differently, so you'll then want to go in afterward and make any small adjustments that you see fit. So I'm just going to grab them all. We're going to go to Fills. We're going to make all of the fills white. And then we're going to go to Borders, and Color Fill, we'll make all of them black. And again, we're going to choose, I think I had 4. All right. So that's a great start, but as you can see, there are a couple of things that don't quite look right here. So the eyes and the nostrils, those actually look better as solid black with no border. So let's adjust those again. Actually, I think the mouth as well. So we've selected all 5 of these separate shapes here. We're going to go back to Fill. We're going to choose black. We don't want any border at all, so we're going to hit 0. All right, so that's looking good again. Now, another thing you'll notice is that the ears are now appearing to be in front of the face when we want them to be behind the face. So we're going to select all of the components of both ears. You're going to go to the top toolbar here, and there's these send forward and send backward tools. We are going to send them backward. Now, depending on how many layers this particular illustration is made of, you may have to hit this multiple times until it gets behind the layer that you want it to. So if nothing happens with the first couple of clicks, just keep going and it will happen eventually. And you'll see to the left in this layers palette, you'll see them actually moving down. Okay, so now they're finally sitting behind the head. So now this first illustration for your coloring book is finished and we can move on to the next one. So again, you can just toggle multi-page here. And if you want, you can go to fit all. Okay, and now you can just move on to your next page. So let's look at something a little bit more complex. We'll head down to this bottom page here. We'll just toggle out of multi-page mode so that it just brings up this one page. And again, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to scale it up to how big I think I want it on my 8x10 page. So that looks about right. Again, I'm going to click it and I'm just going to ungroup it. And again, if you want, you can just select all the components at once, apply the same fill and border, and then just go back and fix anything that doesn't look quite right. So once all the components are selected, I'm going to go back to fill. I'm going to choose a white fill and a black border. And then I'm going to make the border 4 points. Okay, so again, it's a good start, but we need to do a little bit of manipulation here. So I'm going to start by grabbing those eyes. And this portion of the beak. And I think this grass too. I'm going to choose a black fill for those. And I'm going to get rid of the border altogether. Now I've just taken a screenshot of the before of this picture so I can kind of compare it to what I've got going on with my edited illustration here. So as you can see, this green patch was actually consisting of 2 separate shapes. So that looks a bit off. So what we're going to want to do here is just combine those to make it one shape like it is in the one below. And to do that, we're going to use what in Illustrator would be called the Pathfinder tool, but in Gravit, you're going to choose Create Compound Shape. And you're going to click that, and that will instantly combine the 2 shapes. So I'm going to get rid of this. Now I'm just going to zoom in a little bit and just take a look and see if anything else needs fixing here. So that's looking a bit weird. It looks like there's some sort of layer order thing going on there. So again, I'm going to bring that to the front. There we go. Now that's sitting on front. I'm just actually going to nudge that up a little bit because there's sort of a weird thing that was going on here. Now that's covered up. Okay, so now that we're getting into the nitty-gritty detail here, I'm going to zoom into this area. You can kind of see it's not quite attaching quite the way we want it. So I'm just going to click that and I'm going to head over to the borders panel here. And I'm just going to click on the advanced stroke settings. I'm going to go to joins and I'm going to hit round. When we do that, that just kind of caps off that edge there. You can see before it was just kind of cut at an awkward angle straight up and down. When you hit round, it just gives a nice round end to it. And that obviously looks a little bit better. Again, we've got a little bit of an awkward area in here. So I think I'm just going to move the shell down a little bit just to get rid of that. Then that top part of the shell can come down as well. So that now looks pretty good. And now I'm just going to move on to the next illustration. Now what you can do before you export these is you can select the page and we're going to head over to the page palette over here and we're going to click this button, Trim Canvas. That's just going to trim the canvas down to the size of our illustration. Now you might be confused at this point because we went to the trouble of actually creating pages that were the size of our coloring book. The only reason we did that is because of the challenge I talked about earlier, where if we're importing this into Canva, we're going to have to do it as JPEGs. So I wanted to create 8x10 pages in the beginning, just so I knew how much to scale up these illustrations. If you're working in a program other than Canva, then you wouldn't have had to worry about page size at all throughout any of this process. But since we're going to be using Canva today, I created my pages at 8x10 so I could scale them up to the size I wanted them to be, so that when I export them as JPEGs, they're going to be at the final size. And the reason I'm now fitting the page to the selected artwork is just to make the file smaller. So these are the two that I've done. So these are the two we're going to work with. Now, a good idea before you export all of these as well is to just name your pages, which we can do in this palette. So the two I'm really concerned about are the pig and the chicken. And then we're going to go to export. So file, export, advanced export. You're going to have all the different pages here with the names that you've given them. We're going to select JPEG only because we are going to be using Canva. If you're using a different program that isn't finicky with SVG, you can just keep it as an SVG. What you don't want to use is PNG. PNG is not for printing, so that's not going to be suitable for us. Keep the size as is. JPEG quality, we want the highest possible. And background, we'll just leave that as is, and we'll hit export all. And that's just going to wind up in your downloads folder. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to head over to Canva. And if you haven't signed up for Canva, go ahead and sign up for a free account. We're going to create a design with custom dimensions. Again, I've decided to choose 8x10. I'm going to hit create design. And I'm going to start uploading my files. So we'll go to uploads. You can either drag your images right into here, or you can click upload an image. It's going to be in a zip file, so you'll have to unzip that first. And I'm going to choose pig, and I'll just plop that in there. Once it's in this panel, I can just drag it right onto my page. So if you just drag it, you'll know that it's centered because you're going to get this vertical line here. Same with if you kind of move it up and down slowly, you'll get that pink crosshairs. That's going to tell you that it's perfectly centered in your page. And then we're going to add a new page. We'll throw our chicken in there. All right, that is centered. And if you want, you can just select all of them at once. We'll just grab these other pages that we didn't complete. And then you'll get all of them uploading at once. And again, you're just going to hit add new page for each page of your coloring book. And of course, if you want to add a page at the beginning with some sort of, this coloring book belongs to, or any of your copyright information, you can do that in here. So I've added this blank page. If I want to put this at the beginning, I can just click this move up button here. Now that's at the front. I can click the text icon here and we'll get a bunch of different type treatments that I can choose from, which is great. These type palettes are great for getting some really nicely professionally designed font pairings without actually having to do any of the work yourself. So once you've found a type treatment that you like, you can just click on it and it'll end up right in your book. And then you can just click right in there and you can change the text to whatever you want. Now, obviously, you're going to want to choose something a little bit more exciting than that, but just for example's sake, you get the point. And of course, if you want to add anything else to your coloring book pages while you're in here, feel free. Maybe instead of just having the illustration, maybe you want to have a word in there as well. For this one, I don't know, what is this, a chicken? We will just call it a chicken for now. Anyways, you get the point. You can just add whatever you want in here, and And just keep in mind, the minimum number of pages for a book published through KDP is 24, so you're going to need at least 24 of these illustrations. And then obviously keep in mind, you're going to want to do a cover as well, which I also recommend doing in Canva. And you can check out my video on how to create a cover in Canva if you're not sure. And once you're ready to download this, you can head up to the Publish button here. First off, you could change the name of the file here to Coloring Book, whatever you want to call it. And then we're going to hit Publish, and you're going to want to download this. It's going to suggest PNG, which you definitely don't want. Scroll down to PDF print, high quality. You're probably not going to want a bleed on this because most of the images are going to be contained within the document. And you're going to want to make sure that all pages are selected. Then you are going to hit download. So here it is. Here is our coloring book, the first couple of pages anyways. So I hope after this tutorial you can see that it's probably not as difficult as you might have thought it is to create a coloring book on your own using completely free software and free images. Now I showed you a pretty basic version here using really simple illustrations. You can absolutely get a little bit more complex than this. You might have to spend a little bit of time just playing around in whatever program you're using to get the hang of it, but this is kind of, the bare minimum of what you can do. And if you're doing something geared towards kids like this one, then simple illustrations like this are perfect. Of course, adult coloring books are all the rage now, so you might want to think about slightly more complex illustrations, which obviously still doable. It's just going to take a little bit more time to edit all of those outlines and fills and get the outline of the drawing and removing those color fills. But at the very least, I hope you now feel confident in your ability to go out and attempt one of these for yourself, no matter how simple or complex you want the final product to be. Again, after trying probably about 5 different free vector editing softwares over the last couple of days, Gravit was the one that I thought was the best in terms of its functionality and the different features that it offers. I have heard that Inkscape is probably closest one to Illustrator that you'll find for free. But again, if you're on a Mac like I am, there's some third-party software that you've got to download, which just was a bit of a pain in the butt, so I just didn't want to go there. If you have questions on anything I've done in this tutorial, feel free to just leave them in the comments below. And if you attempt this on your own, then let me know how it goes and if you ran into any problems or whether or not you were happy with the final results. All right, thanks guys.